All right, hello. This is the second video I've made, and I'm going to talk about using LIDDS. So that's our acronym LIDDS. So using LIDDS for understanding and for reading for value. What you see in front of you right now is a passage from the other Wes Moore that I've copied onto a Google document. But first, before I do that, I want to write out basically the purpose or the reason why we use LIDDS. Okay, we want to understand the author's purpose in using our literary techniques, so LIDDS, as well as irony, personification, and foreshadowing. This is all on the board in the classroom, by the way. We also want to understand, actually I'll use a semicolon because they're related. Yeah, I'll say this. Understand the author's message as well. So the author's message related to the main subjects and themes. Okay. The second part is it has to do with the text, but it also has to do with you as the reader. And really we want to talk about the why. Okay, so we want to answer the why. This means answering not only why things happen in the story, but why they happen in the world too. And by being able to do this, by being able to connect the text with the things you see in real life, although to be fair, the other Wes Moore is a nonfiction story, so this is real life being documented in this book. But answering the why in real life helps you take books and make them relevant to you. This aids your reading. It makes reading more interesting because you can actually use it for value in your life rather than just passing your eyes over words and taking a test and being done. Okay? It makes reading sort of a tool that you can use to understand yourself and understand the world around you. Okay? I'll stop there and we'll get to the text here, because what I'm going to do is what you're doing this week on B-Day. And what I'm going to ask you to do is identify key passages as you read. And many of you will ask, well, what is a key passage? And I'll write that out right here. Okay. Key passages are basically this. Okay. They contain key information about the main subjects, themes, or characters in the story. They will often have one or more aspects of LIDDS present in the details, and those details will answer the big questions of the text. Or I should say, not necessarily will answer, will help answer the big questions of the text. Themes, character motivation is mainly what I'm talking about here. So that's what we have so far. So let's take a look at the passage. So this is a passage in chapter 1 about Mary. And particularly I picked it because it's about Mary's education. And we're going to find out why education is so important to her by the end of the paragraph. So when we read, we want to pay attention, obviously, for the LIDDS, for irony, personification, and foreshadowing. But here is an example of detail. Okay, we have some details about the world that Mary's growing up in. We also have some comparisons. So Johns Hopkins, which is a famous university in Baltimore, is compared to other universities like Columbia, which is in Harlem and is a prestigious school, as well as the University of Chicago, which is in the south side of Chicago. Okay, now, sorry. Let's look how Wes Moore describes this school. Okay, so he says here that while Johns Hopkins was only 5 miles from where Mary grew up, it might have been a world away. So he's indicating right here, and I'm going to underline this, he's indicating that And I'll make a note, like you can make in your margins or in your notes. While Mary is close to her educational opportunities, those opportunities, oops, I spelled it wrong, opportunities, seem a part of a different world to her. Okay, now the question is, why? So let's see if we can answer that here, and maybe we can't, but it's something, if we can't answer it, that we can pay attention to. So he goes on, he says, to many in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins was a beautiful campus you could walk past but not through, which reinforces the fact that it's a different world. It played the same role that Columbia University did for the Harlem residents who surrounded it, or the University of Chicago did for the South Side. And this might not be obvious right now, but I hope it will become obvious that what he's talking about is a race and class difference. That the people that largely live in Harlem or the South Side of Chicago in these areas are African American, and that the students who go to these universities, Columbia and the University of Chicago, are not. They're largely white or Asian. There will be African Americans there, of course, but proportionally, it's not going to represent how the city looks, okay? And Moore makes that point right here. It was a school largely for people from out of town, preppies who observed the surrounding neighborhood with a voyeuristic curiosity. Now, I'm going to change the color of that word because that's a word we need to know. It has a few different definitions, but the definition here is that it's basically the practice of taking pleasure in observing something that's private, sordid, or scandalous. So it's a negative adjective. Okay, these people are curious, but it has a negative connotation. Okay, these people in the colleges are looking at the surrounding area as if they're looking on something that's private or sordid or scandalous. There's another definition that says voyeur, that describes voyeuristic as deriving or relating to enjoyment from seeing the pain and distress of others. So this is clearly a negative and almost dehumanizing word that he's using here. Okay, and he goes on, and I'll reread it. So the preppies who observed the surrounding neighborhood with a voyeuristic curiosity when they weren't hatching myths about it to scare freshmen. This city wasn't their home. So he's making this point again. So he's, again, repeating for emphasis. But after completing her community college requirements, Mary attempted the short but improbable journey from the neighborhood to the campus. Her heart jumped when she received her acceptance letter. It was a golden ticket to another world. Okay, so here we find out two things. One, Mary gets accepted to the school. That's a big deal. Okay, it's a prestigious school. From someone like Mary, I'm sure that she felt ecstatic. Okay, the second part of this is an allusion to another story. Okay, golden ticket is a reference, or I won't even say reference, is an allusion to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. Okay, and if you don't know, the golden ticket, whoops, typing too fast. The golden ticket equals essentially a way out of poverty for Charlie Bucket, who is the main character. It's not Willy Wonka. Charlie Bucket is the main character. So Willy Wonka is the weird candy man, but Charlie Bucket is the poor kid who has a good soul. Okay? So the golden ticket for him is a way out of poverty. So by comparing this acceptance letter to a golden ticket, what Wes Moore is doing, is revealing, or let's say something simpler, is conveying that education is a golden ticket or a path out of poverty. Okay, so with this passage, I think these are the main takeaways. Okay, and you can see them in my notes, that while Mary is close to her educational opportunities, those opportunities seem at first to be a part of a different world. Yet, when she applies and gets accepted, she now has this metaphorical golden ticket Or quite literally, she has access to a way out of poverty.